17th November 2021. After loading their guns and putting on their masks, at around 12:20 p.m., two people pulled up to Makeda's homemade butter cookies. They leave their white Mercedes and start walking towards the entrance of the store, armed to their teeth. With the target in sight, the two men unload their firearms. The victim falls down after 22 shots penetrated his body. The soul that went missing that day was that of a Memphis legend, a rapper who went by the name of Young Dolph, the same person whose music and persona shaped the 2010s, not only in Memphis, but the whole USA. You see, Dolph was one of the few, if not the only rap artist, who made it to the top of the game making his music his way and not having to answer to any record label at all. He had a strong vision of where he wanted to be and how he wanted to get there, and this is exactly what put him in the target of many, which ultimately led to his death. Dolph believed in himself, and most importantly his music. That belief went on to the extent of turning down multi-million-dollar offers more than once.
6 months, I've been having a motherfucking $22 million contract debating on shit I do the deal or not. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, should I take the 22 million? Fuck the 22 million.
The only thing stopping him was the fierce competition that would use any means in order to reach their end. This is the story of Young Dolph and what caused him to meet his tragic end. This is the story of a murder in Memphis. Adolph Robert Thornton Jr. was born in Chicago, Illinois on the 27th of July, 1985. However, when he was 2 years old, his family moved to Memphis, Tennessee, the city in which Dolph built his music career. Most children in South Memphis were raised by their grandmothers, as their parents were drug addicts. Dolph had a similar story. Dolph even counted himself lucky as he got to see his parents every now and then.
He just started asking me questions like, how was your grandma this, and how did she do this, and how did, like, I don't know, man.
Living under grandma's rules was in no way an easy task, but according to Young Dolph, it helped shape who Dolph was as a person. The bringing up that he experienced under his grandma turned him into a responsible grown-up. In his own words, Dolph's grandma was the meanest motherfucker in the world. Just to give you an example of what she was like, for a long time growing up, he didn't understand why his grandmother, Ida Mae, declined to acknowledge some of the company that he kept. She would never allow him to call those people friends. However, as he got older, he began to understand why Ida was like that. She was prepping him for the world in which people leave you out to dry when you least expect it. That's precisely why Young Dolph said these words.
No, it's like she prepared him for life. My grandma influenced me so hard. My little boy can down there sit and tell you about a lot of shit and he ain't never even met her, don't know nothing about it. Real talk, like she fucked the nigga up in a good way.
With soaring inflation and with our economy in shambles, D.C. liberals answer, raise your taxes. Senator Warnock and D.C. liberals voted for billions in higher taxes on the middle class. Tell them to give families a tax break.
As he grew up, Dolph's felt the need to be more useful in the household. Getting a regular 9-to-5 was not an option for him. So following what seemed like the only option to Dolph, he got more and more involved in street life. Quickly enough, Young Dolph was pushing drugs. Can you imagine a 77-year-old woman trying to raise 3 elementary kids in the middle of the hood with all this gang activity and drug infestation? That's hard to do for any old lady. So my situation, I'm realizing all the responsibility. I couldn't let her take all the responsibility. I always liked money, so when I was 15, 16, I went headfirst into the streets. However, the life he found in the streets was also a part of the reason why he started doing music. One, for the vast number of connections that he made at the time. Young Dolph may have never made it to the Hall of Fame of rap. If you ask Dolph, the same streets that raised him were the same streets that watched him transition into his music career. Even though Dolph loved music since he was a youngin', he didn't start making his own until a bit later in life, when his grandmother died. Dolph took a serious loss. The loss of his grandma was tragic, but he used that trauma and he turned it into music. He started rapping as a way to cope with his sorrow. The lyrics he was putting on paper were coming straight from his heart, and people felt that immediately. In 2009, Dolph dropped his first track. He made it purely out of fun, but little did he know that that was the beginning of something beyond his imagination. People around were encouraging him to spread out his music to all of Memphis and see where it would take him. Dolph had the money and the guts to do it. He was a known street figure, and a lot of DJs knew him already. He had very little to lose. So Dolph decided to give it a shot. He pressed up 20,000 CDs of his mixtape Paper Route campaign, and he started giving them out to every single club that he could find in the city, from the smallest and insignificant ones to the major players in the game. Dolph also made sure that nobody's pockets were empty. Even at such a young age, he had knowledge of economics. Dolph knew very well that good marketing always comes with a high price tag. The audience reception was overall positive. This is when the earliest Dolph fans were born. Without too much hesitation, Dolph decided to pursue a career in the music industry. As expected from such a wise persona, he did it his own way. Astonishingly enough, just 2 years passed before young Dolph managed to kick off his very own label. In 2010, Dolph formally established his very own record label, and it was called Paper Route Empire. The name PRE stemmed from Dolph's fascination with money. It was an independent record label, meaning they're not under jurisdiction of any other major record label. What they did was their own business. That same year, on July 2nd, 2010, Dolph would go on to release Welcome to Dolph World. If you ask him, he considers this to be his first official mixtape. It's produced by DJ Scream, and all the tracks were reminiscent of the music that historically came out of Memphis, like that of 3 6 Mafia, 8 Ball, and MJG. But this mixtape only paved the way for the music that was coming in the following years. In 2011, Dolph dropped mixtapes High Class Street Music and High Class Street Music Episode 2. And with these tapes, he started discovering his own style. Young Dolph's tracks became recognizable thanks to his deep voice and the aggressive delivery of his verses. At that point, with a number of mixtapes under his belt and quite a street rep to go along with it, young Dolph was accruing serious attention. His popularity eventually captured the attention of another successful Memphis rapper, Yo Gotti. That time, Yo Gotti was already somewhat established, and the opportunity to sign other artists to his record label. That's why Gotti offered young Dolph a record deal with his Collective Music Group, or CMG for short. CMG was formerly known as Cocaine Music Group, but they changed the name to better suit the market. Dolph got offered in 2014, but he declined it. He wished to stay independent and do his own thing. Little did anyone suspect this would only be the beginning of a serious beef that would last for years between him and Yo Gotti. According to an interview that young Dolph did at the Breakfast Club, the history between him and Gotti was pretty simple. There were basically two issues that gave birth to a whole plethora of consequences. One was the fact that Yo Gotti wanted Dolph signed, but Dolph rejected him. And number two was the fact that Dolph dated Gotti's girl. Let's first cover the whole dilemma of the deal that was offered to Dolph. Yo Gotti texted Dolph for 2 years. He desperately wanted young Dolph signed to his record label, and he even asked Dolph to send him a track with an open verse so he could spit on it together. This was even before the two of them met in person. It was at their meeting that Dolph drew the conclusion of denying the deal, and here's why. The meeting between Dolph and Gotti happened in 2012, and it took place because one of the DJs who worked with Dolph managed to convince him to meet with Yo Gotti at Gotti's studio. As Dolph was waiting for Gotti to show up, he was approached by Gotti's manager, a man by the name of Pepper. Before Gotti even showed up, Pepper had already suggested Dolph not take the deal. He thought of Dolph as a guy who had his own thing going on, and he doesn't need Gotti's help. That's when Gotti showed up. The two of them finally met and got straight to talking. Gotti immediately showed Dolph appreciation by acknowledging the fact that Dolph already has his money, his team, and his music. However, Gotti had a vision for the two that was beyond just music. It was a business proposition more than anything else, and remember, Dolph already knew his business. But as Gotti was trying to close the deal with Dolph, he made a crucial mistake. He talked poorly of the artists who were already signed to him. He diminished the work of his artists, Zilla and Starlito. He said they were like children and that he needed to hold their hands all the time and show them how to do everything. Gotti thought of Dolph as a different animal. He was self-sustainable. He needed no guidance. That was the deal breaker. How can you downplay your own artists just to get another one signed? What will ever assure Dolph that he won't end up being thrown under the bus just like Zilla and Starlito? Suffice it to say, Dolph was disappointed. The deal was off, and there was no way they could ever work together. Plus, a big reason why Dolph wanted to stay alone is that he didn't want people to think one day that he only made it in the rap world because of Gotti. In all honesty, sometimes it's like that. According to Yo Gotti, the last time the two spoke was on August 24th of 2012. As hinted earlier, the second issue that caused the fallout between the two of them was the fact that young Dolph had a thing with Yo Gotti's ex-girl. Even though it was never discussed or admitted publicly by either party, everyone on the streets knows the business. Dolph had a thing with Gotti's girl, and he referenced the fact throughout his music. The first time that happened was in the mixtape South Memphis Kingpin, where young Dolph had a track called Scared of Me. Yeah, he can rap, but he lying, I'm through sugarcoating. And oh yeah, him, yeah, he cool, but he fake as doing all that tricking on that still f***ing your baby mama. Then on October 8th, 2015, he released a mixtape called Shitting on the Industry. On the title track, he mentioned someone's baby mama DMing him, and guess who that girl is? Guess who baby mama DM'd me? Say you the shit. I would tell you, but I'm always starting shit. This time around, Yo Gotti took notice of subliminal shots that young Dolph sent his way. That's when he brewed up a response for Dolph in his track, Legendary, where he rhymes, "You really hate me about the bitch, my dude, that's some other shit. How you gonna be a legend when you doing legendary sucker shit?" The next thing that happened in the timeline of these two represents a tipping point in their relationship. On February 9th, 2016, young Dolph announced his new album titled King of Memphis. This is where things started becoming more and more public and out in the open. The whole world was catching up to the diss that existed between these two. The competition for #1 Memphis rapper became apparent. Yo Gotti always claimed that he was the king of Memphis, and now here came Dolph, hungry for his shot at the title. The fact that Yo Gotti released his 8th album, The Art of Hustle, on February 19th, 2016, the same day that Dolph released his King of Memphis, spelled nothing but trouble. Memphis rap scene had to choose between Dolph and Gotti, and this paved the way for the ultra-violence that ensued only months later. Throughout his life, young Dolph was targeted at multiple times. It's uncertain as to exactly how many times there were attempts at Dolph's life, but the number is concerningly high. Nobody has the exact number, but it's probably higher than anyone doing research can expect. But the first attempt that we have information on is the attempt at the CIA in 2016. From the 23rd to the 28th of February, there's always a big celebration at the city of Charlotte. In 2016, Dolph was there, performing at one of his late-night parties. At the event, 50 to 60 shots were fired at young Dolph's Mercedes-Benz Sprinter van. Luckily for Dolph, he wasn't in the van. However, his manager was. The incident took place near the Sky Condominiums and Hyatt Hotel on South Caldwell Street on February 28, 2016. The police estimate that 40 to 50 shots were fired into the two cars and into the lobby door of the hotel. There were 3 suspects who were apprehended the same night. Howard Wright, Kevin Thompson, and Derek Bolton were arrested and charged with 3 counts of shooting into an occupied dwelling and discharging a firearm in city limits. Even though these names might not seem known to you, one of them is pretty known to Yo Gotti. Howard Wright was Yo Gotti's road manager and the vice president of CMG. It was the first attempt at Dolph's life coming from Gotti's crew. The CIAA event in 2017 couldn't go by without an incident either. On the 25th of February 2017, Dolph and his crew showed up at the CIAA event again. This time around, the circumstances were different. Not only was young Dolph in the car that got shot up, but the number of shots that were fired was significantly higher too. Roughly 100 bullets were targeted at young Dolph. Luckily for him, the car was bulletproof, and Dolph survived without a single scratch. Not only that, but he went on to perform that same night, just hours after the shooting. He performed his diss Yo Gotti track, Play With You Bitch, in front of the crowd, and he even called out the whole CMG label right after his performance came to a close. This incident would serve as a blueprint for his upcoming album, which dropped on April 1st, 2017. The album was called Bulletproof, and the first track on the album was the legendary track 100 Shots. The people who were behind the hit were quickly brought to justice, just like they were back in 2016. However, this time the perpetrators turned themselves in. 3 men, including Yo Gotti's signed rapper Sammy Benson, aka Black Youngsta, turned themselves in. Alongside him were Frederick Black and Antavius Garner. They all came from Memphis. Black Youngsta was charged with 6 counts of discharging a firearm into occupied property and on 1 count of felony conspiracy. 2017 wasn't over for Dolph. There was yet another incident targeted at Dolph. A couple of months later, on September 27, 2017, young Dolph was targeted in LA. Both he and Yo Gotti were staying at the Lowe's Hollywood Hotel. 3 men approached young Dolph in front of the hotel in the valet parking area. What started as a verbal argument quickly got out of hand and guns were drawn. One person, a man by the name of Corey McClendon, took out a gun and shot Dolph multiple times. Dolph needed immediate medical attention, so he was rushed to the hospital, but he made it out alive. Corey was apprehended but released the following day because of insufficient evidence. If you were suspecting some sort of a connection between Yo Gotti and Corey McClendon, you'd be correct. Corey McClendon was Yo Gotti's affiliate. No man is untouchable, and the hitters that wanted Dolph gone were persistent. The 4th time that Dolph was targeted was the final one for him. On November 17, 2021, young Dolph left his home in his camo-painted Corvette to grab some cookies from his favorite cookie place. Little did he know he was going to his own demise. That was the place where the gundown soon occurred. Nikita's homemade butter cookies. According to the store's owner, young Dolph was approached by a vehicle while entering the store. As he was getting inside, he was intercepted by a hail of bullets coming from the chambers of two hitmen. Memphis rap legend Young Dolph was pronounced dead shortly thereafter. Some sources claim Dolph was hit by 22 shots by the two guys who ran up on him. Even if the bullet wounds weren't as serious as the source claims, they were still sufficient enough to take away his life. The news of the incident sparked such a big interest from the locals that the government officials had to intervene, urging citizens to stay inside until some evidence was accrued by the police department. Believe it or not, Yo Gotti's place was patrolled by police cars due to the high probability of retaliation. Right off the bat, they expected some sort of connection with Yo Gotti, and the risk was too big to take at the time. However, the mystery of Gotti's connection was solved on January 5th, 2022. And according to the official story that the police department came up with, there's no link between Gotti and Dolph's death. In fact, the suspect, Justin Johnson, who was a rapper and goes by the name of Straight Drop, had affiliations with Key Glock, a fellow PRE artist who Dolph enamored. The second suspect was Cornelius Smith. He was already in custody. He had been indicted on first-degree charges. Even though there were no obvious links between Yo Gotti and Dolph's hit, there was another mystery in play here. A more sinister one. There were a lot of things happening behind closed doors involving young Dolph that nobody knew about until recently. See, allegedly, Dolph was making deals with some very dangerous people. That was in all likelihood what got him in such serious trouble. So much so that shooters were sent to take Dolph out. Knowingly or not, Dolph made dangerous enemies when he crossed the Trula Mafia, and that he had the ultimate price: his life. Trouble in Dolph's paradise awoke on the same day that young Dolph decided to sign an artist who had a troublesome history with the Trula Mafia. His name was Uncle Danny, aka Big Unc. You see, Danny was the one accused of taking out D-Money, an integral member of the Trula Mafia gang. Therefore, we can see where the problem stems from. The second that Dolph's PRE had Uncle Danny under their belt, they invited their demons to come out and play. The names of suspects responsible for Dolph's tragic death, they're both members of the Trulas. The Trula Mafia is notorious for the brutal crimes they commit in the city of Memphis, almost on a daily basis. From grand theft auto to ordering hits, these people do it all. But they are not the only suspects. Among the most important ones is none other than the leader of the Trula, a man called CEO Teezy. Ever since the hit on Dolph, Teezy ran off to Jamaica. With Teezy's name being dragged into the story, the whole script of Dolph's hit now changes. The fact that CEO Teezy might be involved means something that a lot of people predicted from the inception. This is where the CMG comes back to the story. CMG and Trula have connections, very deep ones too. Yo Gotti's brother, Big Juke, was a known associate of CEO Teezy. Footage can be found of Teezy and Juke together on several occasions. The fact that they can be seen talking during Teezy's birthday celebration implies that they are in fact close friends. However, that's not the only link between CMG and Trula. Another suspect in the investigation of Dolph slaying is a man by the name of Shundell Barnett. Shundell is a known associate of Black Youngsta, the CMG rapper who dissed Dolph in his songs and even attempted a hit on Dolph but was released because of insufficient evidence. Shundell appears on Black Youngsta's videos. It's believed that it was an accessory to the ambush that took place on November 17th. Even though money was surely involved, the Trulas didn't do it for the bag. The main motive was retribution. D-Money and his brother J-Money passed, and someone had to answer for it. They were high-ranking members of the Mafia gang, and the only policy they believe in is an eye for an eye. The fact that D-Money was signed to Dolph's label meant that, in their eyes, they were close, especially because Dolph doesn't make deals with just anybody. That's what led to the murder in Memphis, orchestrated by the Trula Mafia and backed up by CMG. The day that Dolph died was the day that Memphis lost one of its musical legends. All the ways in which young Dolph touched the community can't be fully comprehended. The city of Memphis ever named a street after young Dolph. The fan base that he amassed during his career is one that is loyal to the bone. His fans will forever rock to his music and make sure that his name never gets forgotten. Even now, when he's not with us anymore, people are still listening and learning more and more about him and his music. The more I learn about Dolph, the more it hurts to know he's gone. Young Dolph had something that most rappers or even people today don't have: a heart. He had morals. No surprise he didn't mess with Yo Gotti after he just talked his whole team to get Dolph to sign with him. Dolph looked at everyone with respect. You couldn't have a low self-esteem and be around Dolph. You had to keep it 1000% with dude. I think Dolph just didn't like how fake Yo Gotti's approach was. Without any slimmer a doubt, Dolph's legacy as an independent artist and businessman is carved in the hip-hop universe. His acts of charity and all the numerous donations that he made will forever stay in the hearts of all the people at receiving ends of that money. What a lot of people fail to understand is just how prolific Dolph was in terms of his financial establishment. Dolph managed to create a record label all by himself from scratch, starting from zero. But he built his own empire, and he made it with nothing but hard work and dedication. That's precisely the reason why he's such an inspiration to this day, to all the folks who ever heard even a single song and read a single article about young Dolph. That's why his name will still echo in the streets for a very long time.